who has celebrated the art of the automobile, particularly French coach-built cars. And in this exhibit, Peter celebrates not only the automobiles made by Bugatti, but the great works of art that the entire family, Bugatti family, did, including sculpture, fine art, Art Deco furniture, some beautiful things. And as you can see behind me here, some of the most beautiful automobiles ever created. Behind me is the Type 57 SC Atlantic, which is considered maybe the greatest supercar of the 1930s era. There are only 2 of these cars in existence, and this one, of course, was designed by Jean Bugatti, whose image you see behind the car. And it's just a masterpiece of artful engineering and body design. It's a complete design statement, and I think for most young designers, our students who come down here, they're completely inspired by magnificent work like this done in the mid-1930s. One thing about the Type 57 SC Atlantic, it's an amazing chassis with a supercharged 8-cylinder engine, but this was really the beginnings of truly romantic sort of teardrop shapes in the body design, obviously inspired by aircraft from the era, but also this was a study in new materials science. There's an alloy body that was very difficult at this time to weld, and so Bugatti actually celebrated the joining technology with exposed seams over the entire car. And so the body material and assembly actually becomes part of the design beauty of the car. Is that the kind of,
Yeah.
So if that's enough here, I could do more, but then go to the,
Yeah.
because the one I designed would have been our best shot at Bugatti's replacement for this one.
Okay. So we'll do sort of.
Great. This is the fabulous Bugatti Royale. There were only 6 or 7 of these made, each with a different body design, but it was just the grandest of automobiles from the 1930s. The huge 8-cylinder engine actually was used in a pairing for locomotives made in France, so it is a massively powerful, enormous, beautiful car. The amazing thing about this car is it's so exquisitely proportioned that if you saw a photograph of it without a reference for scale, it would be hard to tell how large this car actually is. One of the things that inspired the entire line of Bugatti cars, of course, was advanced engineering. And this is a Type 35 Grand Prix car, which was very successful in its era, starting in the 20s. And it was smaller and lighter and incredibly well engineered and very, very fast against competitors that were much larger in scale. But you can see Bugatti's commitment to engineering. I mean, even metallurgy, like the front axle of this thing, this would be difficult to make today, let alone in the 20s. But aluminum and steel parts and the joining methodology and the fabrication techniques were very, very advanced for the time. Of course, as you can see around us, one of the things about celebrating this exhibit, the art of Bugatti automobiles, it's not only automobiles. You can see here some other beautiful artifacts from the Bugatti family and Art Deco furniture and sculpture.
So it really indicates our last name.
As a 7-8-year-old kid, I was scared to death, but it was the most exhilarating ride I'd ever had.
Artioli.
We're back. You want to tell us about this one?
Oh, sure. Yeah, this is the Bugatti EB110. It was the first modern era Bugatti under the direction of Artioli, and it was before VW Group actually bought the Bugatti company, the revived Bugatti company. But an amazing mid-engine supercar that's the precursor of the Veyron and now the Chiron Bugatti sports cars.
Did they bring back Bugatti?
Yeah, this was the first modern.
Meet up at the Art Center.
They conceived this exhibit. Same model Ferrari and McLaren used to.
How so? How do you mean?
Well, they developed their technology and racetrack and mystique around the brand and sell it on the street.
So, I think we need to sort of give
Contextualize this. Yeah, okay.
contextualize.
Yeah. So you saw the Type 57 Atlantic just a moment ago, but this is, in 1939 was the plan for Bugatti's next great supercar. And the chassis you see here was built in 1939. It was notably advanced because, as you see, it's an aluminum space frame with a combination of aluminum pressings and stampings and unique approaches to joining the materials, a supercharged straight 8. Tragically, Jean Bugatti, the designer, was killed in a driving accident in 1939, and then of course war broke out, so the project was never finished. So Peter Mullen has owned this magnificent chassis and has thought about what might Jean Bugatti have done had he survived. And so this is the collaboration. I did the design work for Peter. Peter was heavily involved in the philosophy and the appropriate technologies used in 1939. And this is the body design that we built recently. It was finished and unveiled at ArtCenter in 2013. So our decision is to never finish it and paint it, never do an interior, treat it as a work in progress, like an unfinished symphony, because we don't know 100% what Jean Bugatti would have done, so it might be presumptuous to make that statement. So here it's shown above the chassis so you can still enjoy the chassis. The body design is done with monocoque structure, which was emerging aircraft construction methodology. And the entire body weighs less than 350 pounds, so it's really advanced technology, but plausibly would have been done in 1939 in our opinion.
What are some of the specialties?
One of the things bits of evidence we do have from Jean Bugatti, he did some lovely little patent drawings of doors that hinged upward. And this would have preceded the Mercedes-Benz gull wing, for example, by at least 15 years. So we incorporated that feature into it. We did little cast hinges that look very much like the other foundry bits on this chassis, so it looks like it was done in the same fabrication philosophy. And as you can see, it's just finished in a satin metal. You can see how everything was joined in terms of gas welding. It was done in period correct fabrication techniques. The brass around the window surrounds, is not yet plated with nickel plating. So we're treating everything as a nearly finished work.
You mentioned about the history of this from World War II. Could Could you explain a little bit about how this came to be preserved?
Yeah, so in 1939, the Bugatti had created 3 of these chassis, and they were destined to be the next great supercar. But when war broke out, everything was hidden away, the technology was protected, and today all 3 chassis survive. 2 of them are in California, and 1 is in France.
Where was this one found?
I'm not sure. I mean,
Wasn't it found in
you know, the Bugatti airplane was hidden up overhead in a, hayloft in a barn. So that's
Right, that was the, yeah. Right. That was we didn't walk up the stairs. We'll just get down.
great.
Oh, I bet. You should just sit on the bench.
It's one of the all-time magnificent cars. You can see it has an innovation of a retractable windshield. The windshield can come down, completely disappear. So beautiful. We're on the 3rd floor of the Petersen Museum, which is history. It's the history of the automobile. And behind me is a beautiful exhibit, which on the wall you can see depicted in full scale is the first self-propelled vehicle. It's the steam-powered French Cugnard wagon, and it was an industrial wagon, massive in scale, and in front of it, some 115 years later, the 1886 self-propelled Benz, designed by Carl Benz. And so this is really the beginning of what would become Mercedes-Benz, 1886.
That's a steam engine on the back, or what is it?
Yeah, see here it's 2 miles per hour. This is the steam boiler. You had to start somewhere,
The instinct was there for a long time.
Yeah. When the automobile first came into major cities like New York as a self-propelled carriage, it's so interesting because up until that point, the issues with horse-drawn carriages, manure and flies and all these things happening in the cities, the automobile was an amazing ecological advancement at that time. Because not only did the smoke from the internal combustion engine kill the flies, but it cut down on the amount of the unwanted byproduct of horses. So these little carriages became very, very popular in the early cities. There's a whole section back there you may have seen that's a little less relevant to design, but it's so interesting. It's movie cars and the impact of automobiles and film.
Whatever's interesting to you is interesting to me.
Well, we'll just take a lap over to the electric cars. So this is one of the more interesting exhibits here at the Petersen, which is, here we are in Southern California in the entertainment industry, and these are all stars as cars. These cars have been in the movies. So you've got the films and the backdrop behind these different cars were in, and these are all sort of celebrity status cars of different kinds.
Still thrilling to see that one.
Yes.
We have like a history with the Batmobile at ArtCenter, right?
Yeah, the Batmobile, we've had a number of folks in our entertainment design department at ArtCenter who participated in designing Batmobiles, so it's always exciting to see.
There we go.
Here's the Batmobile. Yeah, this is the mid-60s Toyota 2000 GT.
Let's get a little closer to the light.
Okay. The Toyota 2000 GT from, I believe, 1967 was really one of the first great sports cars made in Japan in the modern era, and it's absolutely lovely. It's a sought-after car. Toyota collaborated with Yamaha to build these cars, and it was actually used in a James Bond movie, I believe, but for me, that's not why it's great. It's just a great design.
What was it influenced by? What were the cars?
You know, I talked to the designer years ago in Japan when I was with Toyota, and he said there was no sports car culture in Japan at that time, so he did a lot of research, and I think you can see from the influence, one of the cars that he studied greatly was the Jaguar E-Type coupe. It has some of the character of that, but it's very much its own lovely design. Every designer I know really likes this car.
Have you ever had one at Car Classic?
Yes, we have. Yeah, with the modern era Toyota Lexus.
Have you announced the Car Classic being
Pretty sure cars designed by ArtCenter. Pretty sure. Yeah. Yeah, so this group of concept cars, or dream cars as you might call them, from the 50s is a lot of fun. You can see things in these designs that actually influenced production cars in the years that followed. But these would have been shown at Motoramas and car shows in the 50s. And in this case, 1955 Chevrolet, you can see moving into highly three-dimensional windshield glass, which they did later in the 50s. They always did these to gauge, public response to some of the new features. These dream cars always had embedded in them an array of new technologies. GM design staff would work with engineering to showcase things that were precursors to future cars.
Did that influence the Corvair?
You can see influences for several cars here. I mean, some Corvair theme elements. And the scale is notably small, so I think this may have been one of the early studies on a smaller General Motors line of cars.
Do they still still do that? Is that
They do, yeah. So let's see, there's one from General Motors, this one from Chrysler Corporation, the Dodge concept car from 1953, and really exploring the idea of a sports car from a major company. So I would say quite influenced by Italian design in this case. You know, Virgil Exner, who was the head of design for Chrysler, really did celebrate, you know, Italian design and actually worked together with Ghia on a number of different cars. This is one in particular, the Explorer, done by Ghia in Italy. So they would prepare a Chrysler chassis of a particular dimension, send it to Italy for a styling study. And this one is a dramatic, beautiful car when you consider 1954 time frame.
so? Ghia is an iconic Italian designer.
A design house.
Design house.
So like Volkswagen went to Ghia for a coupe body for the Volkswagen. Carbon.
Right.
Carbon made the bodies, Ghia designed it.
Ah.
So it's Volkswagen Carbon Ghia.
So this was designed by the same
Design
house
house,
that
yeah.
designed the car
Yeah,
Ghia.
Ghia. And this was never a production car, but it influenced things that Chrysler would later do in production cars. But
Look how fun that type is.
oh, everything about this is right down to the Ghia badge and lovely interior design.
Are all these concept cars functioning like you described?
That might just be a full-scale model. Full-scale plastic model.
But like that Acura concept car that was brought to Car Classic, that was...
Oh yeah, yeah. And these are real cars. These were used actually. Oh, the city. There's one exhibit that's out of here right now that's Southern California Automobile Club. Oh no, it is out here. So it talks about the growth of the automobile and urban growth in Southern California. It's so interconnected, and it's beautifully described in the Southern California Automobile Club exhibit.
Yeah.
It's sort of the essence of post-war hot rods, where you would take humble parts from mostly Ford Model A's and Model T's and do what the race cars had, you know, drop the chassis lower and use the body parts and cut and trim and make something quite sporting out of humble components.
This is like the precursor to chip booths.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. How do you take available things and artfully construct something?
I love that.
This little International Scout is great. I mean, consider that today sport utilities are made by every car company in the world, but International was one of the very few that made a little sport utility vehicle. It's very, very popular, and then followed soon by the Ford Bronco.
Do they still make these? Is this
No. International is only a big truck maker these days, but even the advertising and the idea of a truck company making something for sport utility use or outdoor use was quite a new concept then.
Toyota like kind of borrowed
The
from
Toyota
them.
Land Cruiser entered that space, and the Ford Bronco. This is all in the early '60s, so it was sort of the first of a whole new category. Do you want to try the floor below?
Yeah.
And see?
Whole connection.
Lovely little Chevrolet coupe. This would have been one of the early fully enclosed cars. The weather was really an issue. Most cars just had side curtains and soft tops, but this was a fully enclosed production Chevrolet.
Is that a rumble seat in the back?
I don't think so. Now this was the clincher type with wood spokes. This is way before you could have, you know, tubeless tires. So these had tubes inside. So to change a wheel, you took it off here. And so the spares were just the outer rim. And these little clinchers were a high wear item. So, you know, the old thing about going to a used car lot, kicking tires, have you heard that?
Yeah.
It was because of these clinchers. People would kick those to see if these were loose. So that's what tire kicking
so
is
funny.
all about.
Yeah.
Of course, the EV1 is worth I think the highly aerodynamic and well-engineered little General Motors EV1 electric, there are only a few of these surviving now because General Motors, for liability reasons, took them back. But a few exist. I think Leno has one. Thankfully, the Petersen Museum has one. But it was a great step forward, even when the battery technology wasn't as mature as it is today, but a great step forward in rethinking not only the propulsion system, but the way you build the car. I mean, this had a space frame inside and polymer body panels, very aerodynamic, tapering to the rear. So this expressed a whole lot more than just the fact that it was an electric car for the time. Quite advanced. I'm glad a few of these survive.
Great. This was before that Honda.
Yeah, this was in the 80s. You see those sort of teardrop shape?
Yeah.
Yeah, Honda had
Yeah.
How many of these were made at the original time?
I want to say there were, I'm not sure, maybe tell us, maybe 500 or something? Over 1,000 built, so. And you couldn't buy them from General Motors, you could only lease them, because I mean General Motors was using this as a very important study on the future of electric cars. So I'm sure General Motors learned a great deal from this project. But most of us as designers wish more of them survived.
Yeah.
All right. Put it down.
Okay. Yeah, when you get a chance sometime, that's the truth. You know, all the early road signs, speed limits, and wayfinding, built up by the government. No, there was no Department of Transportation. Everything said all was built up.
Oh, we're back.
So, thanks to the leadership of Peter Mullen and the board here at the Petersen Museum, we have a wonderful Art Center College of Design Transportation Design Studio here at the Petersen that is active every day with our design students here working on their projects. So we're especially excited about this because, as you can see today, there are lots of school children here. I think it's something in the order of 10,000 school kids are through the Petersen every year. So it's an opportunity to expose students to the career path in automotive design and development. So we like that very much. So let's go in the studio. So we have two different sides to the studio. This is the more traditional tools side where sculpting of clay models and foam models is done and traditional sketching. And then the other side is more the digital studio where we're doing computer-aided design modeling, 3D printing of parts. And so all of it is part of the process that we prepare our students for modern design studio career paths. The automotive industry started using clay in the 1920s as a sculpting medium. And it's interesting to us because, you know, clay is in many ways kind of an ancient tool for humans to use to craft objects, you know, whether it's beautiful vessels for things that you would see in ancient Egypt or whatever, but clay is still a useful tool. Most of the studios, even though they use extensively the digital tools, will use clay to add subtlety and nuance, kind of the human touch to the sculpture of the automobile. So we teach that, and it actually helps our students when they move to the digital tools to have done this and gain a knowledge of sculpture and surface development. So some of the finished models you see here, this is a combination of models that were actually sculpted in clay and finished and given an automotive finish. And some of the models were completely done from going from sketches into computer-aided design tools. And this particular model, for example, was all either milled on a 5-axis mill, removing material, or some of the parts were done additively by 3D printing techniques. So in this room, you see the full array of drawing, sculpting, handwork, and even the expression, you know, using very sophisticated digital tools.
The last bread show?
You had that little Porsche model?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So our students do the full array of thinking and drawing in the most classic way. I mean, you can see very quick, small, casual sketches to articulate ideas. And as these are developed, they get more and more sophisticated using various digital tools. And then some of the really finished work is, of course, a very mature digital model with rendering tools that the computer has to really get right down to the fine detail. Yeah, we'll look over your shoulder then. We do that in a minute?
Let me get it up.
Great, excellent. Thank you, man.
We are live.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, so a designer in the contemporary studio needs to have the full spectrum of visual communication abilities, whether it's the very quick, empathic small sketch like you see here, or carried through to something much more finished and delineated, and finally, you know, a mature computer-aided design model that gets right down to explaining, you know, materials, textures, and colors, and so on, and actually showing that in the digital model. Love that. Just loved it.
That's the future, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So you can see on this side of the studio, we have printing, some 3D printing, different tools, so that you can make complex three-dimensional parts right here in the studio at the Petersen Museum. Most of our students, when they complete their body of work at Art Center and do a grad show, will try to show a pretty full bandwidth of capability, from vehicles that are quite practical and maybe a bit more near term, like this truck project, all the way to some highly futuristic, autonomous sorts of solutions. So we like to encourage them to really think about practical innovation for now, but also for the far future. Yeah, there's a lot for that. So another really expressive model that was done. This student did it on her internship in France, with Renault in France. So it's a study of a future Renault Alpine sports car. It's a very exciting project. All right, here. We'll let him talk too. Yeah, so here again is the digital part of our studio here at the Petersen. And we have a student here that will give us a little explanation of going really from a beautiful sketch or rendering into full 3D surfacing. So.
Yeah, so
Describe that.
this is my Z53 Corvette project. It's supposed to be a celebration of all that's right with Corvette over the 7 generations of Corvette. So the idea came from my 5th term exteriors project. Was to kind of take the same philosophy Porsche had with the Panamera and expanding their lineup to having Corvette doing the exact same thing, considering Corvette's a one platform brand at the moment. So my design philosophy was I was trying to pick apart what North American automotive design is, and when I was going through all my sketches, I tried to visualize what that would be. And from my viewpoint, it's very powerful, very a lot of energy. So I tried to emphasize that with my design, with very pronounced fenders. So when I got into my digital model, I was able to really explore the design. So, and also pushing and pulling the CVs to just have fine details, such as this nice S reflection right here. So also what we try to do here at Art Center is we try to have the future, but we also try to push or also be realistic. So for me personally, when I start a digital design, I like to start out with my 5th scale mannequins, just so I can keep the design honest and a wheelbase. So from that point, it actually ends up with this final model that's right here that ended up at the Art Center gallery. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well done. Now this is the outside photography things that really helped you to go back and forth between physical.
It did. So that's one project, and this is my McLaren project.
Oh, good.
So this is a good example of going from a sketch, a little thumbnail sketch, to a final render right here. So I was trying to take the McLaren's new design language, which I am a very big fan of, and trying to incorporate that into my own design. So my design itself is based on bow tie, and the idea was to have these surfaces pulling into these surfaces, And also when I was like looking at their new design language, I was trying to understand what McLaren's new direction is. So what I've come up with at the moment is that their design language is like, if you were to imagine it as like, say, a ribbon, so it has like nice beautiful volumes but very sharp edges. So so that's I'm about halfway through on this project, so we shall see. Thank you. Yep.
So you had a lot of kids in here today?
Yeah.
That's great.
Every Thursday and Friday, it's like a carnival. But it's good though. It's good though. They're always
Busloads of kids. I mean,
yeah.
I loved seeing the kid take a picture of the clay model.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah. No, they get the kids that come in here are legitimately excited.
Yeah.
So they're
You can tell the ones that are a future you or me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. 'Cause, I mean, there was the other day I was working on my Ferrari project, and there was a kid came in and he was just like practically salivating over the picture. It was awesome. It did remind me of me. When
Absolutely.
I was a kid.
Absolutely.
But it was nice to see.
I have a question from Patrick. He just wants to know how much of it is hand sketching and how much is on a Wacom tablet in terms of the drawing people do.
Well, I can defer to my student here, but from my view, it's both. It's probably 50-50 because so often if you're working on a model development in a professional studio and there's a discussion, there may not be time to go back and sit at your computer and do things. There's immediate communication, and sketching is a form of communication. And so all of these things are just a simulation of a future reality, right? Whether it's a sketch or a finished rendering or a clay model or a mature digital model like you're building there. It's all because the future is the actual product. So these are just ways to imagine, the team see what that is going to be. So I think it's exactly both. It's a good question though. Good question.
Another question from Henrik, which is, what is the process of painting the actual models? How are they painted?
Yep. The painting process, and we could ask you about maybe a recent example, but if you look around, they're all very high level, skillfully done, well surfaced. So you can even look to practices in an automotive body shop where something damaged has to be put back into good surface clarity, a finish built up, and then a fine automotive paint finish put on it. So what about your most recent one, for example?
My most recent one, it was I really don't see any difference between a finished like car that you'd see on the road and an actual one of our cars. We go to the same exact body shops, we get to the same exact paint, same exact everything. The only difference is it's much smaller, and you have a much smaller surface area to work with. So it, in many ways, the surface quality of a student model, in many respects, is usually, in my opinion, can be better than a finished automotive car, depending on how much effort you want to put into it. So.
Still, a lot of the design studios too, if it's a clay model, don't want to commit to a painted finish on the clay model because you want to revisit the clay and resculpt it. So there are these high elongation films called Dynoc that you can pre-paint and then stretch them out like a big decal and put them over the clay for a temporary viewing. So most of the studios use, sort of a base silver, so they're evaluating everything in kind of a nice silver metallic. It's a nice neutral, and it happens like right here in Southern California. There are over 25 advanced design studios, and so I bet as we stand here right now, there are a lot of models in Southern California, clay models being Dynoc'd with this painted film.
Well, I think we can probably.
Good.
We should probably wrap it up.
Good. Hey, thanks.
Glad you were here. For sure.
So how much do you get interrupted? You don't mind it though, right?
No,
Right.
not at all, no.
Yeah. That's why
Do you
you
want
wanted
to
to.
just do like
It's a,
wrap-up
Sure.
story where you say like,
Yeah.
thanks for
Yeah.
take a minute here?
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for joining us here in the Transportation Design Studio for ArtCenter College of Design here at the Petersen Museum. We're so excited to have the studio here, and it offers a chance for our students to, I think a lot of designers come in here each week from the Southern California studios. This is such an inspiring place, so it's just a perfect place for us to be. So thanks for joining us here.